Thanks for coming. Pretty awesome venue, isn't this? I don't think anybody's ever done a blockchain conference on an aircraft carrier, let alone a floating boat. Pretty crazy. So a little bit about me. I am the founder of a project called Presearch. We are building a decentralized search engine. It is powered by the community, and it is kind of, as we like to think about it, by the people for the people. Prior to that, I had about 18 years in the local search space with my other company, shopcity.com. So with that company, we help local communities build their own Amazon.com, powered by local merchants around the shop local movement. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is the power of decentralization and how we can all come together to create the future today. So what I'm going to be talking about, is basically a definition of decentralization. That word gets thrown out a lot. If you look at all the banners with the different sponsors here, you'll see decentralization or decentralized on pretty much all of them. But as far as having an actual definition of what that means, it's sometimes a little bit hazy. We'll talk a little bit about why it matters and why some of the smartest minds in the world are super excited about the decentralization movement, about blockchain, about cryptocurrency, and how that can help to realize the vision that many of us have. And then we'll talk a little bit about what that vision actually looks like. We talk about, I think, the technology quite a bit, and we talk about the individual projects, but we might not actually discuss the vision and what it will actually look like if these projects are successful. So pretty excited about that, and then some concrete steps that we can take for how to actually realize the potential of this movement and make the future arrive ahead of schedule. So what is decentralization? It's basically a way or a model to delegate control from the centralized authorities to the least centralized authorities. So we're trying to basically localize the control, the decision-making, and the information. Right now, if you think about the structure of the world, it's more centralized than it's ever been. A few services online are controlling the internet. Governments have never been more powerful, and I think it's really a time, it's critical right now. The future could really go two ways. Because of the degree of centralization and the power of the technology, it could either go to the negative, where we could realize something, kind of like some of the information that's come out the past few days, past couple of weeks, about the sharing of information. You look at some of what's happening in places like China, where they're using facial recognition, and they're identifying jaywalkers and building out profiles of people. Or there's kind of the other future, which is something where the people are in control of information, people are in control of the governance of the world, in control of the capital of the world, and it's, I think, a future that needs to be realized, and so the momentum really needs to happen right now. And so how we make that happen and what that exactly looks like is super important. So really, if we want to look at what's wrong right now with centralized control, there's nothing really wrong in theory. In theory, everything seems great. You have somebody who's making decisions and kind of building out this structure to realize it. But in actuality, what's happening is you have somebody who's very disconnected from the actual problem, setting the rules and creating the process. And often there's just a massive disconnect. And so we're not realizing the actual power of any of these solutions. They're also extremely inefficient because we've got tremendous overhead. There's massive bureaucracy right now. If you look at the government, for instance, and the actual degree of overhead, it's unprecedented and it's pretty much unsustainable. So something needs to change, and it's I think this movement that could make it happen. If we look at when things go wrong, how difficult it is to change, that is the centralized model. So we'll see right now a lot of us are feeling very frustrated by the fact that we're not able to realize the change that we want to see, and how do we make that happen. Aside from that, really, it's if you disagree with things, you feel powerless. And I think that's why a lot of the world is kind of in the state that it's in right now, where you see some of these terrible things happening. People just feel powerless. And if we were to have a more empowered society, I think that the world would be a much better place. All of us would feel a lot better and be more productive. And so as far as what's wrong with centralization, those are all the key things. Now, comparing that to a decentralized world, where it's bottom-up, where it is something where we've created basically smaller groups that are able to collaborate up to a higher level, those groups are much more connected to the actual problems that they're trying to solve, and therefore everything is much more in touch, and the solutions are actually more accurate. There's a heck of a lot less overhead, a lot more efficient, a lot more scalable, easy to produce, which is super important. They leverage the internet a lot better. They can be interoperable, so rather than having one kind of monolithic system, you've got basically a bunch of smaller systems that can be put together in ways to create the outcome that we all want to achieve. And that is super important. It's much more in line with the way that software is being developed these days, kind of an agile methodology. And the great thing about blockchain is that it's starting to provide some of the standards for how capital can be transferred with smart contracts, how the different protocols can be executed. And so it is enabling things to connect and for us to realize the gains from that technology a lot more easily. And really the best thing about this entire movement is that everybody can have a voice. This is not like the model that we have right now, where you've got some talking heads and some pundits, and you've got a whole bunch of people that are kind of, the ones actually funding everything, let's be honest, but the ones who can't necessarily have their voices heard in a way that is affecting change. And so what's really awesome about this is that it facilitates the voice and exit model, where you can basically have a voice within a system, and if you're not able to change it in the way that you want to change it, then you can leave. Whereas with a centralized model, it's almost impossible to leave. We're all kind of stuck basically with what we see, and it's just not very empowering. So what is really exciting is why all of this matters. And so it is really about empowerment. It's about helping people feel happier and more fulfilled and more productive. Rather than being a cog in a machine, it's a way to enable people to participate actively, to collaborate with people, and to have the resources that they need, both at the software level as well as at the capital level, to make the things that they want to see in the world actually come to fruition. And that's what's so exciting about this decentralization movement. If we run into issues as we're building solutions, it's a lot easier to fix things. We're all experimenting everything that we do. Nobody really has an actual lock on, is this going to work? And if we have solutions that are easy to fix when they go wrong, then really there's not a whole lot of harm that goes out. What's exciting within the internet space in particular, because of the rise of the gatekeepers, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, is that this helps to bypass the gatekeepers. It minimizes them, and so if we need to get around them, it's a lot easier. Right now, if you try to get around those large, totally prolific organizations, it's almost impossible. You almost need to play within their rules and within their structures right now. And so to be able to actually change and move to something else is extremely exciting and powerful. This is really ultimately all about individual freedom and liberty. It's about enabling people to realize their potential and ultimately to have choice. Choice is what creates empowerment. And if the decentralization movement succeeds like it appears it will, then there's going to be a lot more choice for everybody in all respects, which is extremely exciting. And if you really kind of think about it, politics is one of the most interesting use cases for blockchain technology, for decentralization. And if you just kind of think about how things currently work, you know, we elect some people who are supposed to represent us. We trust them to go out and make all the decisions on our behalf. The entire kind of, you know, electoral system is a little bit strange, doesn't necessarily work that well. And it's really kind of the perfect application for blockchain and for decentralization. And we can start to think about what kind of future could we actually build if we were able to harness some of these technologies and put them into practice. So if instead of that model that I just referenced, what if we went to a direct democracy model where we're actually able to build up a profile of trust and of authority where we can actually vote on different issues ourselves rather than delegating that control out to somebody else who may vote against what is in our best interests and may vote against the interests of the people who have elected them. So if you can imagine a future where we actually have a system that we can log into, we have a profile, and we can go in and actually make change by voting, that is the ultimate tool for empowerment. That is not too far off if this future continues to be realized as it is. If you think about local economies, you think about one of the biggest challenges is access to capital for entrepreneurs. You know, this is a platform and a technology and a movement that can empower local entrepreneurs, provide them with the resources that they need, the tools that they need to provide the services that the local community wants and create a much more holistic economy. If you imagine that money is not controlled by centralized authorities and is able to be forked and changed and created and to have different rules associated with it and have different groups that are adopting different currencies and have them all be interchangeable in a way that can basically enable the strongest ideas and the strongest foundations to get the most financial support and therefore realize the potential of that vision, that's extremely powerful. And to think about that, it's a real game changer. That's why so many of us, I think, are excited about blockchain and cryptocurrency. Imagine a world where the apps and the products that we all use and love, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Ubers, were set up in a more decentralized fashion where we could have voices that would be heard and where we could actually influence the direction of the platforms and participate, be in control of our data, and to know that when we're helping to build these platforms up, that they're not going to be used against us someday and to force certain agendas that maybe we don't agree with. That is the future with decentralized platforms and technologies. The transparency that is really just missing throughout the internet space right now is what we can create with the decentralization and blockchain movement. And then imagine a world where you had all the tools that you needed. How many ideas have you had? How many things have you wanted to realize within the world, but you quickly realize, oh, nobody's going to fund this. How am I going to get money for this? How am I going to organize people? How are we going to create frameworks that everybody can operate within to affect that change? And you just kind of see how high the bar is, and so you get discouraged, and maybe you just, let things go, or you say, oh, well, we're paying the government. Hopefully they'll do something about it. And so you just kind of keep walking by that problem that is nagging and staring you in the face. This is an opportunity to provide all these different groups, all these different people with the tools, with the financial resources, with the ability to organize and to bring about all of the solutions that they know are necessary, because they're the ones who are experiencing either the symptoms or the problems themselves directly within their communities. And I think that is what's really exciting. If you can picture, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, maybe sooner, hopefully, and anybody can basically create a campaign and have transparent funding and access to the resources that they need, and the ability for people to jump in and grab different tasks and have it associated with a profile that kind of builds up their credibility and their authority, and to enable those groups to go out and start doing the things that we all wish were happening right now but aren't happening in this current centralized model. So it is truly exciting times. And I just can't believe that here we are in 2018 on the cusp of so many great things, and we can all participate in different ways, which really kind of brings me, I just realized, to how we can realize the future ahead of schedule. So if everything that I've talked about resonates with you, then you might be a decentralist, which is a really exciting thing to think about, the hundreds of people in this room alone that are decentralists by nature. And the nice thing is if you're new to the movement, you're just kind of jumping in. It's very open. It does not discriminate. You will be welcomed with open arms by some really amazing people who are doing some awesome things. And it is a very friendly and welcoming movement. And it is, I believe, a very diverse movement as well. You've got people from all different walks of life that are participating and making change happen, which is awesome. The internet, obviously, is an amazing tool, and kind of the vision for it initially was that it would be something that was decentralized. It has become the most centralized force in the world right now, and so that's, I think, why so many projects are focused on decentralizing the internet and starting to bring about that new vision, that new world, and that new way to use the internet in a way that will benefit everybody, and where ownership will be much more distributed than it is currently. So that's really an exciting way to kind of jump in and start creating some real change. Now, if you're a community builder but you're not a technologist, you can basically get out there and start rallying people around the causes and the challenges that you see present in your lives, and start looking for technology that might be able to make some of these things happen. There are some amazing projects out there. The easiest way actually to find them is go onto coinmarketcap.com, take a day, and just start scrolling through projects, looking at the names, checking to see if they might resonate with you. Click through to the websites and see what these projects are doing, because there are some truly amazing technologies that are being built right now, but those technologies are going to need to be used in order to affect the change that we need to see. So take the time to do that. And if you can't find a project that matches the needs, then look at building it. There are so many resources out there right now, even if you're not a programmer, to connect with people who are developers to start creating these solutions and leveraging these kind of standardized solutions in an interoperable way so that we can quickly build something that will have a direct impact. And one of the other interesting ways, if you're not doing any of those, is find the projects that you support that are in alignment with your vision and that resonate with you. And if you have a need for their token, a lot of these are tokens that can be utilized within a platform. Buy the token. That's a great way to support the project. And then certainly spreading the word, evangelizing, telling everybody, continuing to build this momentum and the speed to bring this movement out to the world. It is a critical time. We are at a crossroads. We need to make sure that we don't fall back into the prior ways of living and doing business and creating systems and creating organizations. And if we are all out there passionately spreading the word, evangelizing, then things are going to happen and the future is going to arrive ahead of schedule. Thank you.